Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. I'm Munira Yassin from Sudan. I'm a YAR Steering Committee member and International Development Studies Master Candidate at Sciences Po Paris. I'm speaking to you from the unusually sunny Groningen, Netherlands, except for today, so I think it's a good time. And I would like to welcome you to the opening session of the YAR Knowledge Sharing Meeting. Throughout today and the next 2 days, we will be sharing with you the stories and the knowledge produced by 270 young researchers from over 70 countries, forming 34 youth-led research teams, covering global, regional, and sub-regional and national themes. Each researcher with her, his, they own identity and experience of these very tough times, which we all as humans has shared together. To open this event, we will be hearing from the YAR organizers and partners and from one of our YAR researchers. So please make sure to use the chat in the event platform to submit your thoughts and questions to our speakers for today. And without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Gabriela Ramos, the UNESCO Assistant Director General for Social and Human Sciences. Gabriela, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's really exciting to be here with you, with the youth as researchers. That now is a household name. It's a brand. It's so visible, and to this very first knowledge sharing meeting. This session is a space for dialogue, a dialogue between our fantastic researchers with academics, policy experts, international and regional organizations, as well as with civil society and media actors. I want to welcome all of you. I'm, as was mentioned, the Assistant Director General for Social and Human Sciences. But I also want to welcome our dear chairs of Galway, Pat Dolan, and of Penn University, Mark Brennan, who along the young researchers and the staff from my sector have led this initiative for the last 18 months. As was mentioned at the beginning, these are not easy times for anybody. For a year and a half, we have endured the greatest health, economic, and social crisis of our lifetime, and the legacy which is still to be determined. The pandemic has taken millions of lives around the world. It has caused unprecedented economic and social disruption, and we can measure the impact and the scale of this crisis by the massive decline of GDP growth in many countries, the lost life expectancy of around 3 years globally, of the millions of children that we at UNESCO are raising the boys because they might not come back to the schools, particularly girls, and by the more than 100 or 150 million people who have fallen into poverty. The crisis has been particularly harsh on women. They are overrepresented in the health sector. They are overrepresented in the sectors that have been hardly hit. They have to do the homeschooling besides doing what they were doing every day. They are the essential workers, and on top they're facing violence. And I include the young women in this cohort. But here we are talking about youth. And we know that youth have been not spared from COVID-19. They have seen their fundamental freedoms, their educational, mental health, social, and civic life, and these outcomes to be deteriorated. And we also know that the economic possibilities and the access to quality jobs and education are significantly challenged. And the crisis have also shown us the fractures in our societies, inequalities, the lack of solidarity. We're seeing it even with the distribution of vaccines, with some countries going for a third shot and some others just not getting even 2% of their population covered. So the size of this crisis for institutions like UNESCO, and that's why I'm so proud to be with all of you, requires new thinking. It requires that we go out of the box. We cannot go back to where we were before. This has been said by the Secretary General of the United Nations many times. We need to rebuild the systems that put us in such vulnerable situation to not be able to withstand this terrible shock. And when thinking out of the box, when being creative, when being forward-looking, I feel that there's nowhere else to start better than with you, the young people, and that's why this initiative of the youth researchers is so valuable for us. And I think it's a path breaking that I hope will this is just the beginning of a long lasting kind of program that we really need to go forward, because would like to hear from your findings. We celebrate your minds, we celebrate your knowledge, we celebrate the perspectives that you bring, and of course the fact that we received 6,000 applicants at the beginning. I don't know how Pat and Mark really handled with Sue and Maria and all of the wonderful team that you have, but it was about you. And then we have 270 young people from 70 countries engaged. And you have worked for 16 months, young grassroots workers, young academics, young policymakers from very different backgrounds, from very different experiences, different pathways, but with the same belief and the same core motivation to capture and share the perspective of youth all around the world, and to understand what the pandemic has inflicted upon them, and what inspiration and ideas it has nurtured on them. It's really powerful. Your voice is powerful, and we're really happy to be helping it to come out and be heard. We are also celebrating the almost 10,000 young people who have been involved in the Youth as Researchers initiative: applicants, respondents to research surveys and interviews, enumerators, coordinators, reviewing, communicators, interpreters, graphic designers, steering committee members, and all of you, because this is always this is all about people, and people that are committed to this very important goal. And there are vast diversity of findings that we will be listening from you. But I was really enthusiastic about the way you frame the issues. Some of you focus on your country, some of you focus on regions, some of you focus on global themes, but all of you were looking really at how to put together meaningful research findings that could be action oriented and that can change the state of the world. Issues of mental health, media, public opinion, the challenges you faced, young civic actors and the adjustment that they have to be done, the role of technology in ensuring online learning, the intersection between mental health, education, culture, and participation in coping during the pandemic, the role of universities as a support space and network throughout the pandemic, among others. But let me tell you, if I was really inspired by your work, I was looking particularly at the youth-led action, because you show solidarity to the most vulnerable, solidarity to the kids that were not keeping pace with their learning process, solidarity with the elderly. And I would actually dare to say that it's time to pay back this wonderful youth solidarity with also this initiative. And even with this diversity, common priorities have emerged that we will be focusing on: the well-being and learning, the youth-led action, human rights, and the use of technology by young people. And these are the thematic issues that we will be discussing today. But as I said, this is the beginning of a journey. After these two main spaces that were organized for this session, the knowledge space and the research to action space, where you would be participating in 22 sessions and discussing the outcomes, we would really like to bring and distill the most important messages that you want to present yourselves to the high-level policy conference in December with heads of states, ministers of youth, and international organizations. UNESCO and the social and human science sector is committed to open this space of dialogue, but it is you who is going to bring to the table those issues that you consider merit for a revision. We also hope that this research and then policy debate, and then we could also launch a multi-stakeholder global coalition to address the pandemic impact on youth with your knowledge, keep the civic space open, keep governments attachment to scientific-led, evidence-based policymaking. We're seeing a retrenchment in civic space, retrenchment of evidence-based policies. And so it's not only about giving this amazing space to youth, but really using your knowledge to advance these other areas that are now being threatened in many countries. And we also would like to establish, and this is a call for all the members that accompany us today, and I want to thank them for bringing their participants. We're looking forward to establish a global grant scheme to sustainably support youth-led research and solutions, not only in terms of the methodologies, but also financially. So I hope that this will happen. So let me just finish by saying that this is not a one-off initiative. This is our commitment for many years to come. This is a way to engaging with youth in a very different way. UNESCO has done that, engaging with youth, but we are very encouraged by this space of free thinking, free acting, and increasing the impact of the voices of youth in policy decisions. I started by saying the scale of the crisis was immense, but when I see the scale of the contributions that youth can make to address these challenges, I'm confident that we will deliver. And with that, I'm very proud to open the discussions today.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gabriela. As you mentioned, we're here today to celebrate the youth mind, ideas, and knowledge. So please take this chance to show us how we can celebrate you, how we can work with you. And also, you mentioned something that's very interesting for me personally. It's how we can sustainably support youth research. So please also use the chat to share with us your questions and your ideas about how we can sustainably support youth research and make sure that youth are taking active part in research, in the research, and in making the change. Now we will be hearing from Dr. Bat Donnell, UNESCO Chair in Children, Youth and Civic Engagement, National University of Ireland, Galway. Dr. Bat, are you with us?
I am indeed, and thank you
The
very
floor is
much.
yours.
Thank you very much indeed. It's a great honor and pleasure to be with you today, not least because this is the culmination of the first phase of an amazing project where uh, our friends from all over the world, young and not so young, have worked together to create youth voices and youth empowerment in a way that has never been done before. I firstly want to acknowledge and follow on from the fantastic words from Gabriela there, that really what we're doing is starting a journey here together. But the important thing is that this journey has been led by Youth Voice, by you, the young people, with the support of others in UNESCO and wider afield around the world. I think what's really important about these few days is that we really will have a chance to hear from you the fruit that has come from your research work. And I just want to say that the Youth as Researchers programme, which we're very proud of in Ireland, started 8, 9 years ago. To see it become what it has on the UNESCO stage is tremendous. And no more fitting place than UNESCO, given the foundations of how UNESCO started at the end of World War II, when the world faced a global crisis. And with the pandemic, we've had to face a global crisis again. So it's so fitting that the venue and the hub of UNESCO is the home for what this is, a tremendous project. I just briefly want to say that, and others will speak on this, but as UNESCO chairs, in collaboration with social and human sciences sector in UNESCO and the brilliant Sue Vyse and Maria Capriato and other colleagues, it has been a great honour for Mark and I to join with you in the creation of what is your research, your voice, your work. And the research we are very proud of because it stands up in terms of ethics, in terms of validity, in terms of its thorough way that it has been done. Uh, and it is a fantastic voice of evidence. And as Gabriela said, it is a way of causing a movement for the betterment of youth worldwide. We know the pandemic had different impact for youth in different countries, in different regions, in different ways, whether that was in terms of education or well-being or technology or whatever it was. But the one thing that has really struck me about the fantastic work that all of us have done, that have been on various committees, right down to everybody who's been recipients of the research or respondents in the research, has been our humanity and your humanity. And the humanity of youth towards uh, others in their community is one thing that has shone through in this. And if anything that I've learned from learning from you as youth in the research has been the fact that youth care as much, if not more, than other generations for other generations. And that humanity, which is core to UNESCO as an international global organization, has been the shining star. The big question, of course, is how do we now move forward with your work and our work together on the Youth as Researchers program to turn what is incredible research and knowledge into action for the betterment of young people. And there are two reasons why that is really important. Firstly, if we can make the world a better place for youth, we're making it a better place for civic society, because youth are not just in their own right a sector in society, they're part of all generations and they're part of humankind. And whether that is an issue that needs addressing locally in a country like India or in South Africa or in Ireland, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that we're working together for those countries and for each other. And by building a constant road of evidence using youth as researchers as a methodology, I do believe not alone will it be high level, high skill, high impact research, but most importantly, it'll make a difference. And ultimately, the role, or all our role collectively within the UNESCO family, is that we make a difference. And I certainly look forward to continuing to work with you in any way that I can to help make that difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bat, for your very kind word. And it resonates with me personally. And today is an emotional day for me. I mean, YAR has been part of my life for the past 17 months. And every week we meet together in this very unprecedented and bizarre living situation. But I think working, because we're working together, as you mentioned, and we're putting all this effort together, all this creativity and energy together, we managed to stand here where we are today, and I'm really really proud to be part of the YAR family and the UNESCO bigger family. Um, Next, we will have Dr. Mark Brennan, the UNESCO Chair for Community Leadership and Youth Development at the Pennsylvania State University. Dr. Mark, the floor is yours.
Yep. Thank you, Munira, and thank you, Gabrielle and Pat. And most important, thank all of the youth who've been part of this. This has just been an absolutely remarkable first step of the journey over the last year and a half. We're just incredibly proud of you and the work you've done. You went so far above and beyond anything we had hoped or thought might happen. And as Gabriella said, we had over 6,000 people respond to a call to be part of this. One of the really interesting things is that happened overnight. We thought we would launch the Youth as Researchers program to investigate the challenges facing youth. And we put a note on Facebook, and all of you responded. And the 6,000 have provided all kinds of information and insight. And then we've got these amazing teams that have led actual on-the-ground research. Again, went far beyond anything we could have ever dreamed. But with that said, we're not terribly surprised either. Youth have always been the guiding force of social justice, of social change. That's their role. And I think the one thing that's really important to keep in mind here is that the Youth as Researchers program was designed to ensure youth voice in programs and policy. But at the same time, we have to keep in mind that youth represent more than half of the planet. More than half the planet is under 25. This is your planet. And to have your voice heard is it's incredibly important, but it's also an essential human right. And as you do the work that you've done and keep moving forward on this, you pick up the baton that's come before you by many others. Again, young people have been the guiding force of social justice, of change, of all sorts of things to make the world and humanity better. And I can't think of many examples more than this. During the height of a pandemic, when massive amounts of uncertainty were facing all of us, youth put aside everything to be part of this. And they did it voluntarily. They did this in a way that was needed to, they recognized that they were needed to do this, and they stepped up immediately. So it was incredibly humbling, incredibly inspirational, the work you've done. The other thing I would say, and this maybe follows up on what Pat had to say, those of us who've been around a little longer and getting older and grayer, but we see this as an incredible honor to support you in this. We see it as our job to kind of clear the lane for you and to allow you to facilitate all kinds of change that you want to see happen. And we're here for you on that. And I think, as Gabriella explained so nicely, this is part of the mission of UNESCO and the Social and Human Science Group. And we're here to support you and make things go forward. So with that, I guess the last thing I would just say is within UNESCO, within different settings here, your work is absolutely essential. And to get your voices heard, we'll make sure these all get into programs and policy. But more so, you've touched on things that we wouldn't have seen otherwise. Your ability to point to numerous issues on the ground in all kinds of different settings are things that many of us wouldn't have seen. And if we hadn't seen those, if we didn't have your input, things wouldn't have worked out. We wouldn't have gotten through this as well as we did. So there's great things to come in the future. And again, I just want to thank all of you. I want to thank the social and human science sector, Gabriella, Sue, Maria, and the hundreds of youth who met every single Tuesday voluntarily for the last 15, 16 months, and all the other work you've done. So thank you again, and I'll hand it back to Munira now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mark. And what you said is really moving, and it's really important. And something that's really resonates for me is how magnificent it was to have 6,000 youth respond to be part of the YAR initiative. And as you mentioned, doing it voluntarily and during these very hard times is just tell us more and tell us a lot about the role young people can play in changing the world and taking part of the research fields, different research fields. So thank you so much for your words. Last but not least, we will have with us Dr. Legrand Shiremwame, one of the YAR participants from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Dr. Legrand, if you can hear me, the floor is yours. I don't think we can hear you. You're muted.
Yes, thank you. I was saying that I will be speaking in French. Bonjour à tous, bon après-midi. Je suis Legrand Chirumami, docteur Legrand Chirumami à partir de la République démocratique du Congo. Et je suis l'un des jeunes chercheurs dans le projet YAR, Jeunesse comme chercheur, Youth as Researchers de l'UNESCO. Et comme tous les autres chercheurs qui ont participé, tous les autres jeunes chercheurs qui ont participé, nous avons été énormément édifiés de ces projets qui nous a permis de développer les compétences en tant que chercheur, surtout nous avons développé beaucoup de connaissances en tant que chercheur. Ceci nous a permis à développer des connaissances, des recherches, mais aussi basées sur des méthodes le plus solides que possible, mixtes bien sûr, mais aussi selon les règles éthiques de la recherche. Ce projet a été mis en place par les jeunes. Ce sont les jeunes qui ont conçu les projets et la recherche en question, ou bien les différentes recherches en question, ont été conduites par les jeunes et ça portait sur les jeunes, donc sur la jeunesse au niveau du monde entier. Et donc 5 axes ont été particulièrement visés, dont le bien-être des jeunes pendant la COVID-19, l'apprentissage des jeunes pendant la COVID-19, les droits humains des jeunes pendant la COVID-19, l'usage de la technologie pendant la COVID-19 et aussi les actions des jeunes pendant la COVID-19. Et le projet a été orienté sur toute la planète. Donc, il y a eu des équipes en Afrique, en Europe, en Amérique du Nord, au Pacifique, dans les pays arabes, en Asie, dans les Caraïbes et en Amérique latine. Next. Please, next. Pour ce qui concerne l'Afrique, il a été question d'étudier l'impact de la COVID-19 sur l'entrepreneuriat des jeunes comme étant une action menée par les jeunes, mais aussi sur l'apprentissage des jeunes. Et au niveau de l'Amérique du Nord et en Europe, il a été question d'étudier le bien-être des jeunes, l'usage de la technologie et les droits humains des jeunes pendant cette pandémie à COVID-19. Pour l'Amérique latine, l'équipe YAR de l'Amérique latine a fait allusion à l'apprentissage des jeunes, le bien-être des jeunes et l'usage de la technologie. Pour ce qui concerne l'Asie et le Pacifique, l'équipe YAR a cherché sur l'apprentissage des jeunes, les droits humains et les actions menées par les jeunes. Au niveau des pays arabes, ils se sont beaucoup plus penchés sur l'apprentissage et les actions menées par la jeunesse. Next. Next, please. Next. OK. Pour ce qui est des avantages de ces programmes, il y a eu beaucoup de avantages pour nous. Sorry, you can return. Can you return? Sorry. OK. Pour ce qui est des avantages, nous avons beaucoup appris et la jeunesse a vraiment été édifiée à partir de ces projets de l'UNESCO. Et donc, d'abord, la jeunesse a pu développer des compétences en tant que chercheur, et donc des compétences dans la recherche, mais aussi à partir des résultats de ces projets, la jeunesse a pu aider le monde à bien comprendre comment la COVID-19, la pandémie à COVID-19 a eu des impacts sur la jeunesse sur tout le plan, donc sur le plan de l'éducation, sur le plan des actions des jeunes, les droits humains, la technologie, mais aussi l'apprentissage. Et à partir de ces résultats que les jeunes ont pu fournir, ont pu obtenir à partir de leurs recherches, il est déjà possible de découvrir les différentes compétences que les jeunes ont et c'est là au niveau local, au niveau régional et international. Toutes les organisations savent déjà qu'elles peuvent compter sur la jeunesse parce qu'ils ont fait preuve des vaillants chercheurs pendant cette expérience de l'UNESCO. Aussi, ces projets a permis à la jeunesse de former des réseaux et aussi des partenariats entre leurs différentes structures pour collaborer et pour être beaucoup plus résilient face à la COVID-19 et face à d'autres perturbations ou bien d'autres catastrophes qui peuvent toujours surgir. Next. Next. OK. Pour ce qui concerne les ententes des jeunes, la jeunesse voudrait assez que l'UNESCO puisse accompagner la réalisation et la mise en pratique des résultats et les recommandations de ces recherches. Nous ne voudrions pas que les recherches ou bien les résultats obtenus restent comme des lettres mortes, mais il serait mieux que cela soit mis en application. Et pour qu'on y arrive, il fallait que l'UNESCO et d'autres structures des Nations Unies puissent accompagner la mise en application de ces résultats. Aussi, nous nous attendons pour cette période de conférence depuis aujourd'hui jusqu'au au jeudi. Nous nous attendons au partage des connaissances entre les différentes régions. Donc, les gens, par exemple, des pays arabes vont partager leurs connaissances avec ceux de l'Afrique centrale. Ceux de l'Amérique latine partageront leurs connaissances avec ceux de l'Asie ou bien de l'Europe, ainsi de suite. Et ça, c'est une très bonne chose parce que chaque région a sa spécificité et a euh, ses, ses spécialisations ou bien aussi ses différences. Aussi, nous nous attendons à ce que cette recherche puisse continuer, mais cette fois-ci comme des projets, comme des recherches actions, où les résultats obtenus vont être érigés en projet pour que la jeunesse soit beaucoup plus résiliente face à chaque forme toute forme de perturbation, y compris les pandémies et d'autres catastrophes mondiales qui touchent d'habitude la jeunesse et qui est beaucoup plus résiliente. Aussi, nous voudrions assez que si ces projets sont menés, ou bien si des projets vont être érigés sur base de ces résultats, nous voudrions que la jeunesse au niveau national, régional et même au niveau international, nous voudrions que la jeunesse soit beaucoup plus impliquée dans la réalisation de ces résultats parce que dans la plupart des fois, c'est un constat malheureux, dans certains continents bien sûr, la jeunesse a toujours été oubliée et ça, c'est pas une bonne chose. Je pense que nos pays ont comme première force leur jeunesse parce que la jeunesse fait... parce que la jeunesse fait, fait la force d'un pays, fait la force d'un continent et la jeunesse fait aussi la force de notre planète. Merci pour votre compréhension, merci pour votre attention. Next. Merci beaucoup pour votre attention et je suis très sûr que nous allons passer 3 bons jours de conférences où nous tous on va être édifiés et nous allons avoir beaucoup d'informations et de connaissances qui nous permettront d'ajuster encore nos plans de développement, nos stratégies de riposte ainsi que d'autres plans national tout comme international dans le cadre de la riposte contre la COVID-19 qui fait encore des ravages au niveau mondial. J'ai dit et je vous remercie. Thank you.
Merci mille pour votre présentation, Dr. Legrand. Excuse my French, but I'm trying. Thank you so much for it's really nice to hear the YAR methodology and how it's done and the vision from those who have been through it. So thank you so much for sharing this and for introducing the YAR methodology for those who doesn't know a lot about it. So thank you so much for that. This is a great for this is great for the opening session. So now you all know how it's done and how it was targeted. So if you have any questions, please make sure to submit them in the chat. So for Legrand about how it has been done or about his experience. So please do. Now we will be going to the Q&A. Kibon, thank you so much for those who have been submitting their questions and their thoughts. So keep it coming, please. And the first question I have is for all the panelists. So how do you believe youth-led research can contribute to the work of policy institutions today, including big international institutions like the UN and specifically the UNESCO? Yeah, it's for all the panelists. So please, whoever have any thoughts, feel free to unmute yourself and answer.
I can answer there, just to throw in one idea. One of the aspects of youth as researchers that we had hoped would happen years ago when we first developed the program was that youth, because they're on the ground every day, they understand the complexity of a lot of the issues and problems. Those complexities often are missed at a higher level, whether it's in academics or global NGOs or other things. So the youth can provide just an incredible insight into the causes and effects of problems. They can also point out incredible opportunities for innovation, creativity, resilience, entrepreneurship, everything that we quite often may have just missed. Their exposure to it every day makes them perfectly suited to point these things out to us. So it's in many ways, it really serves a lot of functions there.
Yes, please, Gabriela. Thank you so much, Mark.
No, well, thanks to you, and thanks for this wonderful presentation of the program. Let me tell you that I have been more related to the policymakers, so I can tell you that it's really important that in the context of very complex decision-making processes that our governments are facing now, because they need to prioritize, they need to decide whether they are going to be continuing investing more on health issues or investing more on the climate transition or putting first gender issues. I mean, policymakers are always super busy people that need to define the priorities. And I feel that just by getting the research out and by you deciding on the priorities, the youth decided. It was nobody who told them what were the main priorities. We are already setting the agenda for the years to come in the policy world. But the other thing is that we have been saying that it's very important to keep a people-centered approach of the policy decision making, not to just focus on how much growth we're going to get or how much investments or trade, but to really look at how much this impact the well-being of people. And what we have here, it's a very strong call not only on how to frame the issues, but actually how to address them. And this is great. I think we're also looking for solutions, and the action-oriented research that has been produced now is really important. And finally, as I said at the beginning, we are also in the world of massive information, massive misinformation and fake news, and having this very strong research agenda by youth, putting science again to the top. I think COVID has put it at the top, but youth is also contributing to it. It's another way in which we are impacting on governments to also keep them attached to the evidence-based decision making.
Yeah, please go ahead. I don't think we can hear you. You're muted.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes,
Thanks.
perfect.
So I would just completely agree with Gabriela there. I think one of the great opportunities that we have now is that we know youth are solution focused, and that one of the big advantages in youth as researchers is that as policy changes, and policy change is a really important part of understanding policy, is how we change things. by having youth as core researchers in the work, they will quality proof the policy direction we take. They know what's more likely to work for youth and with youth than adults. That's one of the reasons why we have the program. So the first advantage is that purely from an economic point of view, both in terms of social capital, including human social capital, what youth recommend through this research is more likely to work because of the fact that the solutions have been designed by youth. The other factor I would say that makes this really important is the fact that we're talking about doing this through the UNESCO network. UNESCO is a global reach UN organization, and it has the power to positively influence policy across member states. And that combination of the voice of UNESCO with the voice of youth, building on, as Gabriella says, a very strong foundation of scientific evidence, is really a hugely positive, a really, really positive factor that brings together these important elements of positive policy change. And the last thing I'd say is that, you know, the pandemic has affected everybody in every country in the world, regardless of their age and regardless of their circumstances. The extent to which it has influenced or affected people differs. But one of the great and most important factors around the YAR project is that we are in this together. We're in this together from different countries, from different regions, within countries, and from different age groups and across gender. So this is a really strong movement led by youth for youth.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pat, Mark, and Ms. Gabriella for your answers. Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think during today and the next 2 days, we will be talking more about how to transform this knowledge into action. So there is a lot of conversation and discussion that will be taking place, and that will feed into the policy dialogue in December. So it's really nice to see how the YAR journey has moved from just young people working from behind their computers to changing policies and informing policymakers. So I think this is great, just amazing. Yeah. Look, before we move to the next question, Legrand, if you want to say something, you can, or we can just go to the next question.
Yes, thank you. Can I speak in French or in English?
There is translation, so whatever you feel comfortable with. English, yeah, I think they said English now, so yeah, let's give it English then.
Sorry?
English, yeah, if you can speak in English now.
Yes, I can, but my is very, very weak, but I can speak in English. As I said in my short presentation for the for this session, I think that it was a very good, a very nice project as researchers, but it could not be good to let it as just documents, just as reports, but the essential or the important step of this project is to make it as a researcher to action, because in these reports from all different groups of YAR of youth around the world, I noticed that we found many results, and we gave also many suggestions as a recommendation, but those recommendations have to be put in action so that the world and youth can find result or the action of these efforts, the youth involved in this project. It can be valued as actions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Legrand. It's really, I'm really pleased to have you today to representing the voice of the young researchers and sharing with us the experience. So thank you so much for your answer. Now I have a second question. It's for you, Bat. It says that your team developed the YAR concept in 2014. Now, with UNESCO support, it's applied in so many different regions and countries. What is the main learning that you have drawn in this past year as the replication of such concept at global scale during a pandemic, and that has caused so many challenges across the board?
It's a really good question. I suppose my key learning has been around human solidarity. When we started the program many years ago, it was in a very specific context of youth in school and issues around gender issues that they were facing in a particular school. I had no idea when we started it that this would grow as it has grown, and Mark has talked about how that has developed. Um, I think the main learning from me has been that research has power, and that in a positive way, I don't mean that in a negative way, and that youth voice through research is a very powerful tool, because if you can combine youth participation, which is core under the convention, of course, with the production of quality research that can inform policy for social good. We're not using this as a stick to beat anybody with. We're using this as a tool for social good. I think that has been my learning. It has been a tremendous growth. I think the challenge of the pandemic, and as both Gabriella and Mark pointed out, the response from youth to voluntarily engage with us on youth as researchers to look at the issues and how to address them, literally overnight, 18 months ago, has been phenomenal. And indeed, your good self and many others, Munir, we've been meeting every Tuesday for a year and a half, every week, really working together to get us to this point. But in many ways, I see this as the beginning of a great UNESCO initiative and a great journey for us all. So my learning has been humility in one way, because I had no idea that this would be as strong and as global as it has become. And it really shows that we're in this together.
Yeah, thank you so much. But I mean, it's really amazing to see how research is actually power, and how actually young people and humans in general are willing to share this amount of knowledge with each other, and just to make the planet a better place for all of us. So it's and the beautiful thing about research is that it includes different aspect of humility, of communication, and also getting to experience it during the pandemic is definitely a huge learning for all of us, on how we can, on a content and constantly changing world, how we can respond and take actions. So thank you so much for your answer. And I one more question, final question. It's also a general question before we close the session. And I really like this question because it speaks more about personal experiences. And if you would like to share with us, and the audience want to hear from you, personal experiences how the pandemic has affected young person in your own lives and your own direct environment. So please share with us personal experiences. It's a moment to connect personally. So since you cannot meet in person.
I can start with that and then encourage my male panelists to follow. but the fact is that I have two young daughters who are actually doing masters and BAs, and I can tell you that I would say that from the beginning of the crisis, I would have to say it because this is what happened. Young people were somewhat neglected. I feel that it was thought that they were not going to be affected by the virus, as if the virus was the only problem we were confronting. We closed the schools, and it was necessary to do. I am not criticizing that point, but the fact is that we should have been more sensitive to youth voices to understand what kind of experiences they were having, because we all assume, well, if they are not going to die for the virus, because I don't know why it affects most elderly people or people in a later stage of life. And when talking to my girls and seeing how much the lack of contact with their peers, the lack of this refreshing growing together that youth experience by only being together, the lack of answers because we didn't have them, and the perspectives that were being crushed, I would say that now we should realize that they are one of the most exposed to the crisis, and actually they're going to be the ones that live longer with the legacies of the crisis. And my two girls were sharing that with me, and I have to say that I learned from them, and I learned through their mental well-being, because they were really depressed and sad. And then, of course, they found the strength and continue to deliver, as many of the young people around this table. But I have to say that we turned the conversation around, and thanks to Pat, Mark, and my team, and Sue, Marie, and all of the team, but more than anything, thanks to the young researchers that came out with this very strong voice, we want to redress the narrative, and through these personal experiences to put youth at the center.
And
Thank you so
I'll
much, Ms. Gabriela. Yeah.
I will
Go
add to
ahead, please,
that. I
Pat.
mean, thank you, Manira. Manira, I have had three experiences which have impacted on me. Sadly, I lost an older brother, not from COVID, but during COVID, and had the experience of not being able to. In Ireland, we do funerals very well, not being able to have a proper burial for him, really. But much more positively, I have a young grandson, Jack, who is 2.5. But during COVID, we spent a lot of time because we were in a bubble together. So I realized how important time is. And because I'm very busy, as many people are, I realize the importance of time, just having time with each other. And in that context, the youth where I live here in the west of Ireland, young people, neighbours, were just so youth that we would have a lot of contact with. I could see the way COVID was impairing their right to freedom and just mix as young people. But I also have to say I admired the way young people in sports clubs went out and supported other people in our local community here. Just literally down to things like bringing in shopping for older neighbours, or just very simple things. Um, and I had that experience of, as I said, of an older family member and him passing, and a young grandson who will say when he gets older that he was a child during COVID-19, and then looking at youth who had so much disruption in their life. But as Gabriela says, I agree fully. They've just been their response has been fantastic, absolutely. But a lot of experiences.
Yeah, I would just throw in
Thank you
there
so
too.
much. But yeah,
Sorry, kind of the same with that. Both Pat and Gabrielle and the SHS section, we also do a lot of work around empathy development, and I think empathy was key here, and it was exhibited by young people, as Pat pointed out those examples. Um, and I think one of the things that was interesting for me as I talked to some of my students and different family members of mine, for many of us that are older, established in our careers and everything else, the pandemic was disruptive and everything else. But we just sort of, wrote it out as we had to. It's in talking to young people in recent month or two where they've conveyed how much this was disruptive to their life. But in terms of their personal development, I think of university students who had waited their whole life to get to university, and they arrive, and in the middle of their first year, they're sent away into lockdowns and everything else, and didn't come out to almost the end of their university career, and how that was a disruptive thing. I've seen that with younger students at primary and secondary levels, and then also with youth who may have had a very short window to establish a new job or a career or other things, and we forget how that compression of time, that was such an instrumental period in their development. And I think this work that the youth are doing now is even more important now to shed light on that, and how do we pick up from those pieces that we haven't thought about. So it's just there's a remarkable number of layers to the whole pandemic, and youth are pointing that out to a lot of us that may have missed some of those really key points.
Yeah, thank you so much, Morgan. My condolences, Beth, for the loss of your brother. Sending you love and from here, and thank you all. And Mark and Gabriella were just saying about the effect on students, and it's something I experienced personally and resonates for me personally. And every time I read the results or that comes from one of the research groups, it's just amazing how I can relate to this. So it's really inspires me. So thank you so much all for your thoughts, for sharing your thoughts, and for those who shared their questions. We have reached the end of our opening session, but it's just the beginning. So make sure to join the research to action session to learn more about the experiences and lives of almost 8,000 youth who have responded to the YAR surveys and qualitative interviews. So please make sure you do that. And also don't forget to join the Hangouts to exchange ideas with experts who will be joining during this event. So please make the best out of it. Share your thoughts, and make your voice heard. It's a great opportunity. Yes, we're doing it online. I really hope if we were meeting in person, but I'm also hopeful that we will do that soon. I would like to thank all of our speakers, and thank you for those who have shared their questions and thoughts. Thank you all for joining, listening. Enjoy the rest of your day, and please stay safe.
Thanks to you, Monera. Great to be here.
Thank you.
Meeting you.
Thank you very much.